How's it going, guys? Anfield here, and for this video we're going to talk about something I get asked a lot on the stream, and obviously it's a very general question, so you'd expect it to be asked, and that is, how do I get better at World of Tanks and what should I focus on? Now, I always give the same answer on the stream, although I'm sometimes a little distracted while playing and also trying to answer the question, so I figured I'd make a video. Now, this video is going to be kind of short, but it's going to give you kind of an outline, something that you can look at and use, and also something I can direct people to when they ask this question. Although, with that being said, there will be a follow-up video that will be more detailed and have examples that I will eventually be able to point people towards, but this video should be fine. I have talked about this subject before, but I think I need to shed new light on it and sort of go at a new approach towards this kind of thing. So, with that all being said, let's get right into it. So how do you get better at World of Tanks? Well, obviously it's a big question, and there are lots of ways you can get better at World of Tanks. You can learn weak points on tanks, you can learn that angle, your ability to aim can be improved. All this stuff is kind of microing though. This is microing your tank, and it's very important to be able to micro your tank for sure. But general macro ability is more important in World of Tanks. In games like CSGO, your microing is probably a little bit more important than macro strategy, your ability to aim quickly and do all that stuff. Whereas World of Tanks, you're limited by a lot of factors, such as your tank fights against you. It's not as quick as you can aim, it's just as quick as your turret can aim. So while there is skill in aiming and all that good stuff, it's not as important as some other games. Whereas the macro strategy in World of Tanks is huge. And that's where positioning comes in. Now, in this video, I'm going to talk about specifically the early stage of the game, before the countdown's even begun, that you decide where you're going to go. Now, positioning is a broad thing. It also includes situational awareness, knowing when to run away, when to push a flank, when to leave a flank because you just can't get any shots and it's just slowing you down too much and your gun isn't active. But we're going to focus entirely on the beginning. So what do I think about when a battle starts? So you pick your tank and then you load into battle. Now the first thing you usually notice, aside from the amount of artillery that are in the game, is the map that you're going to get. And the map is very important. Obviously you need some general knowledge for this sort of stuff to work anyway. The more advanced your knowledge of the map, the better this will work for you. Now, when you actually load in and you're sitting there waiting at the countdown, you'll obviously know the side of the map you're on, and this is obviously very important too. So based on your tank and based on the map, you kind of have some kind of idea where you're going to go. If you're a medium, you go here. If you're heavy, you go here. You think, okay. But it's also important to check what your team has. So let's say that you're in a medium, but there's only 2 tier 10 mediums on your side. You're one of them, whereas you have a lot of heavies and a lot of TDs, and the other team has, say, 6 mediums. So if this is the case, you don't want to go to an area with a lot of mediums. So that's the first check and balance you have to make. You have to look at the side of the map you're on, look at your tank, and be like, this is where I want to go. And then you have to check that against what your team has versus what the other team has. So if the other team has a lot of certain things, then you want to be more careful, because otherwise you might get overwhelmed by them having superior numbers in that specific flank. This can be true even of heavies as well. When you go to a heavy flank and they have a lot more heavies, go with your mediums or do something different, because if you go to this flank alone where the heavies are likely to show up, you're going to have a bad time. So other things you also want to take into account is the number of artillery, because some flanks are viable only when there's no artillery. There's some really great flanks on some maps, but they come completely unusable or shut down when there's a lot of artillery. That's another thing you have to keep in mind. The other thing about artillery you have to keep in mind too is what type of artillery they have, because some have better arcs than others, some fire faster than others, and that can sometimes make a flank work and sometimes not. You also need to keep in mind what TDs they have, where they're likely to sit in camp, and where you can push and things like that. If you're going to go to a flank that requires you to be able to move over wide open spaces, it's probably not a good idea if they have a ton of tank destroyers as well. Also, you need to keep in mind what kind of tanks each team has, because that can be very important. For example, 250Bs is very different from the other team having 2 E5s. They play very differently, even though they're both classified as heavy. So another thing, you can often rake in 50Bs with the mediums. They're likely to go there. Sometimes the E5s will too. So that's something you need to always process. Always look at the map and think about, where are these tanks most likely to go, where are our tanks most likely to go, and kind of pick a decision based on that. Now, this can all be for nothing if you still don't check where your team is going. everything, because all this can be great. You can be like, this is where the most logical flank for me to push is. However, if your team decides to go all to one other flank, you cannot go to that flank alone. It's so important that you don't do that. You have to always be with people around you. You cannot solo a flank, no matter how hard you try or how good you think you are. You cannot do it. You need to have tanks in those positions. So to sort of sum things up, it's basically your tank, the map you're on, then the side you're on, then what your team has, what the enemy team has, and then how your team actually positions when the countdown is done. It sounds simple, but it's important that you go through this sort of algorithm, so to speak, every battle, and it will really help you a lot. If you give a lot of thought to your initial positioning, it's very, very helpful. I know this is a long video for this little bit. The following video will have a lot more examples and things like that. For this video, I just wanted to talk a bit about it. And I also thought it was important to explain why this is so important with this game. So I do apologize for the length of the video. It was supposed to be shorter, but oh well. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video, guys. Yeah, I will be working on the other ones soon, so I hope you look forward to that. And I'll catch you next time.